William Dorsey Pender was a Civil War Confederate Major General born in Edgecombe County, North Carolina. This presentation will cover the Civil War career of William Dorsey Pender from just before the start of the Civil War in March 1861 to Pender's participation in the Confederate victory during the Second Battle of Manassas campaign between late August and early September 1862. Dorsey Pender demonstrated the valor, initiative, and leadership to warrant promotion from captain in the Confederate Army to brigadier general in Robert E. Lee's Army of Northern Virginia. On December 20, 1860, South Carolina passed an ordinance of succession from the United States. By the end of February 1862, 6 more southern states passed ordinance of succession. At the end of January 1861, First Lieutenant Dorsey Pender was stationed in San Francisco, California, with his wife and son. Lieutenant Pender received career and promotion-enhancing orders to Carlisle Barracks, Pennsylvania, for assigned duty of instructor in cavalry tactics. On February 18, 1861, Jefferson Davis was elected President of the Confederate States of America by the Confederate States Constitutional Convention. On March 9, 1861, First Lieutenant Pender wrote letters of notification of not reporting to Carlisle Barracks to Colonel Lorenzo Thomas, United States Army Adjutant General, and resignation of commission in the United States Army to Secretary of War Simon Cameron. In March 1861, Dorsey Pender traveled to Raleigh to seek a North Carolina Army commission from Governor Ellis. John W. Ellis was the 35th governor of North Carolina from 1859 to 1861. He was born in Rowan County, attended the University of North Carolina, served in the General Assembly, and elected to Superior Court Judge. Governor Ellis died in office on July 7, 1861. By March 14, 1861, Dorsey Pender arrived at Montgomery, Alabama, and secured a commission as a captain in the Confederate Army Artillery. Samuel Cooper was a close friend of Jefferson Davis. Cooper served as Adjutant General of the Confederate Army during the Civil War and was the first Confederate officer promoted to the rank of full general. On March 21st, Adjutant General Cooper ordered Captain Dorsey Pender to Baltimore to establish a Confederate Army recruiting depot. Baltimore provided only 2 companies of recruits to the Confederacy, far short of the expected 10-company regiment. On April 11, 1861, Captain Pender was recalled from Baltimore back to Montgomery, Alabama. By the end of April 1861, the capital of the Confederate States of America was moved to Richmond, Virginia. On April 12, 1861, the Confederate batteries surrounding Fort Sumner opened fire. Major Robert Anderson, Fort Sumner commander, surrendered the fort on April 14, 1861. On April 17, 1861, the state of Virginia passed Ordinance of Succession to formally become the 8th state to join the Confederate States of America. In mid-April 1861, United States Secretary of War Cameron wrote a dispatch to North Carolina Governor Ellis, requesting 2 regiments of troops to suppress the rebellion. Governor Ellis' reply to Secretary Cameron reflected the attitude of North Carolinians. Honorable Simon Cameron, Secretary of War, your dispatch is received, and if genuine, which its extraordinary character leads me to doubt, I have to say, in reply, that I regard the levy of troops made by the administration for the purpose of subjugating the states of the South as a violation of the Constitution and a gross usurpation of power. I can be no party to this wicked violation of the laws of the country and to this war upon the liberties of free people. You get no troops from North Carolina. I will reply more in detail when your call is received by mail. John W. Ellis, Governor of North Carolina. On April 19, 1861, the federal government started the Anaconda Plan to blockade all the Confederate States ports by the Federal Navy. At the end of April 1861, Captain Pender returned to Raleigh, North Carolina, at the request of Governor Ellis. Pender accepted promotion to a lieutenant colonel of the 1st North Carolina State Troops, in addition to his rank of captain in the Confederate Army. By the end of May 1861, the last 4 states to join the Confederacy passed ordinance of succession: Virginia, Arkansas, Tennessee, and North Carolina on May 20, 1861. At the beginning of May 1861, Dorsey Pender was a lieutenant colonel in the 1st North Carolina State Troops. On May 4, 1861, the men of the 1st North Carolina State Troops elected D.H. Hill commanding colonel. D.H. Hill was born in York District, South Carolina. He graduated from West Point in 1842 and earned 2 brevet promotions during the Civil War. He taught college in Virginia and North Carolina from 1849 to 1859. He commanded a division in the Army of Northern Virginia, all of the Confederate troops in North Carolina, and a corps in the Army of Tennessee. D.H. Hill died in 1889. In mid-May 1861, North Carolina Governor Ellis ordered Lieutenant Colonel Pender and the newly formed 3rd North Carolina Volunteers to Gettysburg, North Carolina. Jefferson Davis approved of Pender's permanent transfer from Confederate to North Carolina service. On May 25th, Lieutenant Colonel Pender won the vote of the 3rd North Carolina Volunteers Regiment to become the commanding colonel. On May 28, 1861, a son named after his father, William Dorsey Pender, was born in Good Spring, North Carolina, at the home of Fanny Pender's parents. Colonel Pender was at his son's birth and stayed with the family a few days before returning to Gettysburg. Confederate commanders feared that Federal troops would soon invade the Suffolk, Virginia area, where the Norfolk and Petersburg Railroad intersected the Seaboard and Roanoke Railroad. On May 30, 1861, Colonel Dorsey Pender joined the 3rd North Carolina Volunteers in Suffolk and remained near the railroad's junction for the month of June. On June 10th, the Confederate Army won their first battle at Big Bethel, 10 miles above Fort Monroe. The Confederate troops were under the direct command of Colonel D.H. Hill. By July 4th, Pender and the 3rd North Carolina Volunteers were positioned along Pagan Creek, near Smithfield, to guard Confederate 32-pounder batteries. On July 21st, the Confederate Army defeated the invading Federal Army in First Battle of Manassas. The commander of the 6th North Carolina Regiment was killed while holding left flank. Colonel Dorsey Pender applied for the vacant command. On August 19th, North Carolina Governor Henry T. Clark appointed Colonel Dorsey Pender commanding officer of the 6th North Carolina Regiment. Governor Clark, from Edgecombe County, succeeded Governor Ellis, who died in office on July 7th. By August 26th, Colonel Pender joined the 6th North Carolina at camp near Bristow Station, 4 miles south from Manassas. Colonel Pender discovered the 6th North Carolina was in poor health and morale due to lack of clothing and equipment. By September 19th, the 6th North Carolina was moved to a new campground 20 miles closer to the Potomac River, near the village of Dumfries. The camp was located near the Telegraph Road, the main road between Washington, D.C. and Richmond. The 6th North Carolina guarded river batteries at Freestone Point and Cockpit Point, near the village of Evansport. The batteries were to defend the right flank of the Confederate Army on the south bank of the Potomac River. The batteries were commanded by Pender's West Point classmate and close friend, Stephen D. Lee. Stephen D. Lee was born in Charleston, South Carolina. He graduated from West Point in 1854 and served in frontier outposts all over the West. From 1861 through 1862, S.D. Lee was an artillery commander in the Army of Northern Virginia, joined the Confederate Army of Tennessee in 1863, defended Vicksburg, Mississippi, until its surrender and his capture and exchange. Promoted to lieutenant general in 1864, fought in the 1864 Atlanta, Franklin, Nashville, and the 1865 Carolinas campaigns. During the winter of 1861-62, Colonel Pender kept busy with the 6th North Carolina Regimental drill, inspection, and recruiting. Colonel Pender was also able to dine regularly with Major Stephen D. Lee. In mid-February 1862, General J. E. Johnston's army withdrew from its defensive positions at Manassas and Centerville to stronger positions below the Rappahannock River. On March 7, 1862, the 6th North Carolina, along with the rest of General J. E. Johnston's army, moved to Fredericksburg, Virginia, across the Rappahannock River. The move of Johnston's entire army was not observed by the Federal Army. By March 10, 1862, Whitting's brigade and Pender's 6th North Carolina were bivouacked in fields 2 miles west of Fredericksburg. The regiment remained in camp until early April 1862. From March 17 to April 3, 1862, Major General George McClellan's Army of the Potomac landed on the tip of the Virginia Peninsula and moved up to the Warwick River. Major General J.B. Magruder's force of 12,000 men constructed a defensive line on the north side of the Warwick River. General Joe Johnston's army arrived at the Warwick line. General Johnston assumed overall command of the 35,000 Confederate troops at Yorktown. On April 5th, Brigadier General E.D. Keyes' corps attacked the Warwick line at Lee's Mill. Magruder's deceptive movements convinced McClellan to initiate a bombardment from siege mortars and guns. General Joe Johnston finished reinforcing the Warwick line while McClellan prepared his siege positions. General McClellan spent the next 2.5 weeks planning a massive siege gun barrage to start on May 5th. On the morning of May 4th, General Heintzelman observed from the first use of an observation balloon that the entire Warwick River line was empty. General Joe Johnston was moving his army up the peninsula. Fort Magruder was a 30-foot-high earthen fortification that anchored the Williamsburg line. The rapidly approaching Federal Army prompted General Johnston to use Major General Longstreet's and Major General D.H. Hill's divisions to defend the Williamsburg line. Brigadier General Hooker's division assaulted Fort Magruder, but was repulsed by Longstreet's brigades. Brigadier General Kearny's division arrived to stabilize the Federal line. D.H. Hill's division counterattack prevented Federal divisions from advancing. The Confederate defensive force withdrew during the night. On May 6th, the Confederate Reserve Corps commander, Major General G.W. Smith, observed the Federal Army Brigadier General W.B. Franklin's division ashore at Eltham's Landing on the York River near West Point. On May 7th, Whitting's brigade drove into the center of the advancing Federal picket. J.B. Hood's brigade attacked from the left, and Wade Hampton's brigade attacked from the right through heavy woods. Colonel Pender's 6th North Carolina fought on the right flank and was posted to guard 2 Confederate Parrott guns. Franklin's division was unable to prevent the Confederate Army's withdrawal up the peninsula. By evening on May 8, the Reserve Corps camped at the New Kent Courthouse. The Confederate forces were not actively pursued by McClellan's army. By May 11th, the Reserve Corps and Pender's 6th North Carolina were several miles from Richmond. The troops were in good spirits for the opportunity to have clean clothes. By May 15th, 5 Federal Navy warships, including the ironclad USS Monitor, steamed up the James River to Drury's Bluff, 8 miles from Richmond. After a 3-hour bombardment, the USS Monitor suffered no damage, but the other warships were severely damaged. Federal fleet steamed back down the James River. The Federal Army lost the opportunity to have a base deep in the Confederate rear. On May 27th, Confederate intelligence reports revealed there were 3 Federal Army corps north of the Chickahominy River: Porter's 5th, Franklin's 6th, and Sumner's 2nd. South of the Chickahominy River were Keyes' 4th and Heintzelman's 3rd Corps. General J. E. Johnston divided his army into 2 wings and a reserve. G.W. Smith's left wing included Whitting's and A.P. Hill's divisions. Longstreet's right wing included R.H. Anderson's, D.H. Hill's, and Huger's divisions. The reserve commanded by J.B. Magruder, A.P. Hill's, and J.B. Magruder's divisions were to hold the Federal corps north of the Chickahominy. Longstreet's right-wing divisions would attack towards Fair Oak Stations, Seven Pines, and down the Charles City Road. By 5 p.m., D.H. Hill's troops were reinforced by General R.H. Anderson's division. The Confederates attacked the Federal line between Casey's and Couch's divisions. A portion of General Couch's command retreated north beyond the railroad tracks. General Whiting ordered Law's brigade to attack. Colonel Pender's 6th North Carolina held their position while Law's other regiments retreated. Pender reorganized the scattered regiments. Couch was supported by Sedgwick's division and then repulsed attacks by Whiting's and 3 other brigades. Colonel Pender spent the remaining afternoon sorting out Whiting's troops. Jefferson Davis rode up to Colonel Pender and said, "General Pender, I salute you." By June 1st, G.W. Smith assumed command when J.E. Johnson was wounded. R.H. Anderson and Longstreet advanced up the Williamsburg Road. Gaps between the Confederate brigades were exploited by 3 Federal divisions, which pushed the Confederates back to Seven Pines. Yet the Confederates halted McClellan's army advance towards Richmond. On June 3rd, Colonel Pender was promoted to Brigadier General, to rank from June 3rd, and assigned to command Pettigrew's brigade. Brigadier General Pender's command included the 16th, 22nd, 34th, 38th North Carolina, and the 22nd Virginia Battalion. Pender's brigade was assigned to Major General A.P. Hill, who became a mentor and friend to Dorsey Pender. A.P. Hill graduated West Point class of 1847. He served briefly in the Mexican War, Seminole War, and United States Coastal Survey. Hill was promoted to Brigadier General February 1862, Major General May 1862, and Lieutenant General July 1863. He fought in every Army of Northern Virginia campaign from 1862 until his death at Petersburg, Virginia, in April 1865. Jefferson Davis appointed Robert E. Lee to commander of the Army of Northern Virginia the day after the Battle of Seven Pines. By mid-June 1862, General Lee's strategy was to attack isolated portions of the Army of the Potomac with the entire Army of Northern Virginia. On June 24th, General Lee issued orders to the Army of Northern Virginia for the start of a general engagement against McClellan's scattered command. By June 25th, Lee's army was on the march. A.P. Hill's division was moving in a northeastern direction towards Mechanicsville, Virginia. It was the beginning of the 7 Days Battles from June 26th to July 2nd, 1862. Porter's 5th Corps held the Army of the Potomac's right flank. Morrell's and McCall's divisions were positioned east of Mechanicsville on the far side of Beaver Dam Creek. On June 26th at 3 p.m., D.H. Hill's brigades advanced from their positions on the far left and far right flank. A.P. Hill ordered his brigades across exposed ground west of Beaver Dam Creek. Pender and the other brigades were pinned down from heavy Federal rifle and cannon fire. Pender repeatedly attacked across Beaver Dam Creek and kept his regiments in assigned sector. He withdrew his brigade in an orderly manner after nightfall. During the night, Porter's 5th Corps retreated in a southeastern direction towards Gaines Mill. On the morning of June 27th, A.P. Hill's division advanced from Gaines Mill to Boatswain's Creek. Porter's 5th Corps held a defensive line on Turkey Hill. At 2:30 p.m., A.P. Hill sent his division forward against the center of the Federal position. Pender's brigade gained the crest of the plateau on Turkey Hill, was forced back, and counterattacked unsuccessfully. Pender was slightly wounded in the right arm. By 5 p.m., Stonewall Jackson's command joined Robert E. Lee. A.P. Hill's division, including Pender's brigade, were held in reserve. At 7 p.m., all Lee's divisions advanced from the center and left. Porter's command was overwhelmed. Massed Federal artillery blew gaps in the Confederate ranks, but the assault continued. Porter was able to retreat across the Chickahominy River and rejoin the rest of the Army of the Potomac. On June 28, McClellan ordered a staged withdrawal to the James River. Key's 4th Corps was first to cross south of White Oak Swamp. Porter's 5th Corps was deployed to screen the retreat, taking up blocking positions both north and south of the White Oak Swamp. Stonewall Jackson was ordered to cross the Chickahominy River. Ewell's division found the river crossing screened by Federal troops. Magruder probed the Federal defenses northwest of Fair Oaks and skirmished with Franklin's 6th Corps. McClellan ordered the Army's supply base moved from White House Landing to the James River. A.P. Hill's division and Pender's brigade rested from the 2 previous days' hard fighting. The Federal Army's rear guard at Savage's Station consisted of Sumner's 2nd Corps, Heintzelman's 3rd Corps, and Franklin's 6th Corps. General Heintzelman decided he was not needed and marched his corps south to join the rest of the Army. Magruder's division attacked a portion of Sumner's command. By 5 p.m., General Sumner patched together regiments from all his brigades to comprise a defensive force equal to Magruder's. The battle was broken off due to a nightfall thunderstorm. During the night, McClellan ordered all the Federal troops to retreat towards White Oak Swamp. 2,500 Federal wounded were left at Savage's Station Hospital. On June 30th, Longstreet and A.P. Hill converged on the retreating Federal Army in the vicinity of Glendale and Fraser's Farm. At 5 p.m., Longstreet assaulted McCall's center position and Kearny's right position. McCall's line collapsed back to the Glendale Junction. Kearny held his line and was reinforced by Sedgwick. A.P. Hill's division advanced from the Confederate right. Pender's brigade forced the abandonment of a Federal battery and continued to push forward until a shortage of ammunition required a movement back. After nightfall, the Federal Army marched away from Glendale towards Malvern Hill and the James River. Jefferson Davis congratulated Pender on his performance and kindly inquired about Pender's recent flesh wound. McClellan's artillery reserve, commanded by Colonel Hunt, had over 70 guns on Malvern Hill. 5th Corps Porter was commander on the field. Morrell's and Couch's division held defensive positions on the high ground just behind the batteries. Steep slopes and swamps protected both flanks. Lee's attack was uncharacteristically poorly coordinated. Batteries to be massed on the left and right flanks did not materialize. Longstreet's and A.P. Hill's divisions were held in reserve. Huger's, Magruder's, and D.H. Hill's divisions made uncoordinated attacks during the day. Jackson's divisions provided artillery support, but no infantry attacks during the day. General Lee called off all attacks and moved his troops out of artillery range. During the night, the Army of the Potomac continued its retreat towards Harrison's Landing. Shortly after the Battle of Malvern Hill ended, McClellan ordered General Porter's troops and the artillery to join the rest of the Army of the Potomac at Harrison's Landing, 7 miles southeast from Malvern Hill on the James River. By July 4th, Lee's army was in front of Harrison's Landing, but General Lee decided not to bring on a general engagement against the entrenched Federal artillery and infantry. Lee withdrew his army back to Richmond. The 7 days' battles were over. By this time, Brigadier General Dorsey Pender was home on medical leave. 1. John Pope's Federal Army of the Mississippi won major victories at New Madrid and Island No. 10 on Missouri-Kentucky border. By July 1st, General Pope was ordered by President Lincoln to lead the newly formed Federal Army of Virginia, force commanded by Sigel, Banks, and McDowell. 2. On July 2nd, the Army of the Potomac was in defensive position at Harrison's Landing after Battle of Malvern Hill. 3. By July 10th, Lee moved his army back to Richmond and reorganized the army into 2 wings commanded by Jackson and Longstreet. 4. On July 19th, Jackson occupied Gordonsville, which halted Army of Virginia forward elements. 5. On July 27th, Lee sent A.P. Hill's division to support Jackson at Gordonsville. 6. On July 29th, Brigadier General Pender, after medical leave, rejoined his brigade in A.P. Hill's division. 7. On August 8th, Jackson's command approached Cedar Mountain on the road to Culpeper, Virginia. On August 9th, Stonewall Jackson's army approached Banks' 2nd Corps divisions across the Culpeper-Orange Turnpike near Cedar Mountain. A little before 5 p.m., Augur's division attacked the Confederate right, which fell back. General Winder fell mortally wounded and was replaced by General Taliaferro. Williams' division also overwhelmed the Confederate left, which also started to retreat. Stonewall Jackson saw his whole line collapsing. He waved a battle flag and yelled at his men to rally around him, which stabilized his line. By now, Williams was disorganized and without support from Augur. A.P. Hill's division, now on the field, and Ewell's division were ordered by Jackson to advance. Dorsey Pender's brigade made a sweeping attack from Jackson's far left. By 7 p.m., the Federal line was in full retreat. 1. By August 21st, Lee's Army of Northern Virginia was south of the Rappahannock River. Pope's Army of Virginia was north of the Rappahannock, defending the river fords. 2. On August 24th, Lee ordered Jackson to make a movement around Pope's right. 3. On August 25th, Jackson reached Salem, Virginia. 4. On August 26th, Lee and Longstreet followed Jackson's line of march. 5. On August 26th, Jackson captured Bristow Station. 6. Also on August 26th, Pope ordered the Army of Virginia to pursue Jackson. 7. On August 27th, Jackson eluded Pope and captured a major Federal supply train at Manassas Junction. 8. On August 28th, Jackson headed north towards Centerville. On August 27th, Jackson, including A.P. Hill's division and Pender's brigade, arrived at Manassas Junction to find a fully stocked Federal supply depot. Jackson's troop consumed all the supplies they could eat or carry, the rest were destroyed. Pender's brigade was called on to support the Branch and Archer brigades against the 1st New Jersey Brigade, defending the Bull Run Railroad Bridge. Branch's and Archer's brigades moved forward on the left and center. Pender covered the right flank. Field's brigade came up behind Pender. The Federal troops retreated. Pender burned the railroad bridge and returned to Manassas Junction. By August 30th, Lee's and Pope's armies converged at Manassas. Pope's army on the battlefield were 3 corps from the Army of the Potomac and 2 from the Army of Virginia. By 3 p.m., Porter's 5th Corps attacked Jackson's defensive line behind the unfinished railroad cut. Porter initially broke the Confederate line, but suffered heavy casualties and withdrew under heavy fire. By 4 p.m., Longstreet initiated his 4-division attack against Pope's left flank, anchored on Chinn's Ridge. By 6 p.m., the Federal forces were swept off Chinn's Ridge. The entire Federal front began to shift backwards from the overwhelming force of Longstreet's divisions. The Federals still held Henry House Hill. Jackson launched an attack north of the Turnpike. Pender's and other Jackson's brigades overran the Federal troops north of the Warrenton Pike. By 7 p.m., Pope had established a strong defensive line that aligned with units on the Henry House Hill. By 8 p.m., Pope ordered a general withdrawal on the Turnpike to Centerville. By the morning of August 31st, John Pope's army was on the north side of Bull Run. The army and headquarters were positioned around Centerville. Lee ordered Stonewall Jackson to march his command around the right flank to the rear of the Federal Army. Longstreet's corps would remain in place south of Bull Run during August 31st to deceive the Federal Army into believing that Lee's army was still south of Bull Run. By the evening of August 31st, Federal cavalry patrols reported seeing a large body of Confederate infantry marching toward Germantown. Pope canceled a pending counterattack and sent infantry patrols down all the possible roads on which Lee's army might be advancing. On the morning of September 1st, Pope sent Army of Potomac, Reno's 9th Corps, 2 divisions to confront Jackson's advance. By 3 p.m., Jackson's command reached Ox Hill near Chantilly, Virginia. The battle is also known as the Battle of Ox Hill. By 4 p.m., Reno's Stevens Division were positioned to the left of Ox Road. Stevens' brigades attacked A.P. Hill's and Lawton's brigades. By 5:30 p.m., additional A.P. Hill and Lawton brigades forced Stevens' division to retreat. General Stevens was killed during the attack. Kearny's division, Birney's large 7-regiment brigade, resumed the attack. The battle took place during a blinding rainstorm. Units began to lose their cohesion. Dorsey Pender assumed, with consent, command of other A.P. Hill brigades. By 6:30 p.m., Kearny was killed and Birney assumed command of the division, which fell back. Robinson's and Poe's brigades allowed for an orderly retreat. By September 2nd, the last of Pope's army was securely behind the massive forts and earthworks defending Washington, D.C. On September 2nd, George McClellan was reappointed commander of the Army of the Potomac by Abraham Lincoln. On September 3rd, Robert E. Lee started his fall 1862 Maryland campaign. By September 12th, Abraham Lincoln assigned John Pope to fight Sioux Indians in Minnesota. The Army of Virginia was disbanded and its commands assigned to the Army of the Potomac. This concludes the 1861 through summer of 1862 Civil War career of William Dorsey Pender.